March of 2020, my students were asking if we were going to close school due to COVID. I said, no, it's not like we live in the snow belt. Then it was March 13th. Schools closed and the way we do school changed forever. On this show, we're going to talk about the ways in which schools and community have had to pivot and continue to pivot in a constantly changing reality. This is Pivot.
Welcome to another edition of The Pivot. We are here with some outstanding teachers. I can't wait to get into this conversation. I am Jagga, one of the assistant principals. We are in this discussion of assessment, and you've heard already from Stacy's crew kind of what assessments are. We're going to get further into this conversation with four outstanding teachers. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and let's start with you, Mr. Lidy.
My name is Vince Lidy, and this is my 21st year at Hamilton Southeastern High School.
I'm Caroline Emerson. It's my 9th year at HSC High School. I'm a social studies teacher.
And an alumni.
And I'm an alumni, yeah. I graduated the class of 2007. Last class before Fishers High School.
Emily Kitchen. I teach math, Algebra 1, Honors, Algebra 2. This is my 6th year teaching here at HSC.
And Megan Miller. I'm in with the Exceptional Learners Department, and this is my, I think, 11th year now at HSC.
Awesome. We got the whole gamut. We have a little bit of everything for you. We want to make sure we cover our bases. I want to start this discussion of integrity and security as it relates to assessments with a statement that, Caroline, you made the other day in one of the conversations we were having around bringing the students in on this conversation. A lot of times when we're talking about assessments, it's like the teacher, something went wrong, then it goes above that to the administrators. But what about the ones that count, the students? So talk about something that you like to do when you're talking about this to students.
So I teach, one of the classes I teach is an AP class, and it's particularly with AP students. AP students are a lot more motivated to get the A, and they're a lot more resourceful as well.
That's a good way to put it.
They really want to excel, and so this I notice that a lot of times I notice that these are my students that are more likely to cheat on assessment. Mm-hmm. And so, with this where we are now, it's very easy. So I kind of put it on them as, yeah, you're going to be able to cheat. My test is probably, the questions I do are probably out there. I could spend 10 hours trying to make a perfect test, but it's ultimately up to them. And the way I kind of said is that, if you choose to cheat and everyone in the class gets an A+, I'm the best teacher ever. I look at that test like, yeah, all right, I rock. But if everyone bombs it, then okay, great. Let's go over this again. I don't know what you're learning if you are cheating. And at the AP level, they have to take a test in May to show College Board what they learned. And if they got an A on every test and then they bomb that AP exam because they're not going to be able to cheat on that AP exam, that's something that's going to show there. So basically, I kind of put the ball in their court, and I really feel that a lot of them kind of get it and kind of going that route of that I can't do my job if you're not doing your job. And that's kind of a big thing of, trying to make sure that they're taking that accountability, because in any job, when they get to college, they're going to be able to do the same thing. This day and age, who knows where we're going to be next year in school. And so that's something kind of to get them thinking about the moral idea of it.
I love that. I love bringing them into the conversation and letting them understand the importance of this. I would like for teachers or whoever to listen to this episode to literally be able to rewind, speak exactly what you are saying to students or parents or whoever. So let's just talk a little bit more. What else could you say to students? What advice would you give to teachers to bring everybody into the correct understanding about why we assess?
Well, I would say that you're assessing to check their understanding of material. Maybe for me, if it's in a health class or in a PE class, you're kind of culminating the end of a unit or a couple weeks, and you want to see where they're at. Well, with the online and how it's transformed since March, and then I don't pivot much because I'd already done summer some online summer courses. So basically, I was already in the transition game on the fast break, and
You just pivoted earlier. You pivoted just earlier than the rest of us.
Yeah, I was already lucky enough to anticipate. So it's one of these things where you put things out there, I think, to let the students know that this is what's going to happen. This is kind of the routine, and I established it. And you're at the point now where you're looking at, honest. You're talking about honesty, integrity, and this is what you're going to submit and put out. And at some point, we may soon all get back in person, 100%. School may resume, and the chips will fall in the right line, and depending on what work they've put in prior to your assessments. But I think it's part of the school process. But we've had to make obviously you guys say pivot. I've just adjusted with it, and tried to utilize what I'd done in the past to give our students the opportunity on the assessments on their own.
Emily, Megan, yeah.
Yeah, I had a very similar conversation with my students, kind of like what Caroline was saying. What's interesting about the students that I teach, they're kind of all about the same exact age between freshman and sophomore, but completely different levels, given that I teach a regular Algebra 1 course and an honors Algebra 2 course. So seeing that it's about the same age group, but the motivation behind the students is a lot different. So the conversations I've had for both of them are a little bit different. With my lower kids, my conversation with them is more about taking pride in what they do. So I did put it kind of on them. It's a math course, and it's like at the end of the year when I take that final exam, am I going to be prepared? If I cheated through a lot of my exams, because in math, especially virtual, it's very, very easy to do. But am I going to be prepared? I talked to my honors Algebra 2 kids about, they are very much more motivated. But if they want to be ready for honors pre-calc, if they do the right things, they try their best, I tell them that they can retake I give what's called like a check for understanding, the really small little pop quizzes, but I give them over every single lesson. But they can retake those as many times as they want. Which then helps them they're less likely to cheat if they know that they have more attempts on it. So the conversation also led to, you're going to be ready for honors pre-calc. If you work hard and, you do your best with me on you. If you don't, then, real life, you're probably going to struggle as you go on.
Because the idea is not when you learn, it's that you learn. And so if that means taking it over, if that means reteaching it, that's fine. Megan, from a special ed, exceptional learner standpoint, how do you get kids to understand the importance of assessments and why we have to do them?
Well, I think that we would kind of echo a lot of what you guys are hearing or saying. I think a lot of our roles as the resource teachers of records are to help support the roles that you guys are, the standards that you are setting in your classrooms. And so we not just support the students, but we're supporting what you guys are doing in your classrooms in terms of assessments. So, trying to make sure that, if a student needs to be pulled out into the resource room or in for special accommodations, that, those standards are still being met, and that we are there to help supervise and be your eyes and ears in the classroom to make sure that students are doing what they need to be doing. So it's been very interesting from our perspective, I think, to see all of the unique ways that teachers are doing the assessments, because I'm seeing it through the eyes of many, many students. And so I get a sneak peek into a lot of different classrooms and how teachers are doing it. And so I think that it's been pretty impressive to see what teachers are doing across the building, from allowing multiple attempts to maybe reduce that desire, that urge to want to cheat, because it doesn't seem as high stake when you can do it again, to the way that we're using our technology with different camera angles and different things where teachers can kind of keep an eye on kids. And so, luckily we've got some pretty amazing technology out there that we can use when we know it's there. And so that's helping, I think, to also help keep kids accountable.
Yeah, you talked about how they're doing the assessments. I want to get to that here in a second. But we have the visionary in the house. We have the proprietor of Pivot in the room, Ms. Janie Ulmer. I want her to weigh in on this conversation about how you look at the data, the assessments. Why is this important at the level that you're at, that students are integral about this and the data that we're getting is valid?
I think that assessments are more important this semester than ever because we have had to change how we teach, the way we teach, what that looks like. And assessments let us know, are we really delivering the content in a way that it's sticking? Are they I think I've heard you say this, Jagga. Are they picking up what we're throwing down?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that the right phrase?
No, but okay. So that's great. Let's talk application. Let's talk practicality because our listeners are going to want to know, man, how can I deliver an exam or an assessment that is secure? What strategies are out there? What are you guys doing in the field to make sure that the data that you're getting is what Janie said, accurately reflects the picture that your students know? So
one thing that I've been, I kind of learned this from another former teacher of mine and neighbor, Mr. Cat, who teaches, AP, ACP, regular psych, all that stuff. And I've started applying this with my AP classes is doing class tests where or partner tests even, where they take it together. And so they are able to, because part of the learning and me knowing if they're learning the material, and so me assessing them is hearing them talk about it. And that's almost just as important as them getting the right answer. And I tell them, hey, you don't have to have this. My favorite thing is I don't let them, or they don't have to have the same answers. They can differ. And so almost every time everyone doesn't get the same score. And something else is that I know I've talked to some other people is making an open note. That way, kids at home, kids at school are both, they're getting the same benefits, and you kind of have to have your ducks in a row for an open note test. I know anytime I've given an open note test at school, kids do worse because they don't study. And so you kind of have to make sure that you have those notes ready to go and you know where the stuff is. So that's something kind of to see that because that's a kind of...
especially if there's a time limit
yes,
involved.
Yeah,
and so they
absolutely.
know they have to,
yeah.
right.
And I know writing is something, and that's something probably harder to do in math, is that writing portion. But, writing is something that is a little bit more open-ended writing too, not just, what is the exact answer is, okay, explain to me this, or describe something, how this works, or what's your opinion of this using evidence. That type of stuff is more open-ended because it gives a little bit less stakes of, this is my opinion. I can use the information and kind of get it that way. And that's something I use either my AP class or my regular class because my lower stakes kids, they feel more comfortable. Kids love to talk about their opinion. And so that's something that's easier for them to use the content that way.
I know in my classroom, especially being math, you got to be careful of how you're asking the question. Well, first off, before you even do it, collaborate with teachers. I think that the Algebra 1, and I can only speak to what I teach, but the Algebra 1 group and the Honors Algebra 2 teachers, working together to create a test with other teachers is imperative to a really good exam. And so specifically when we're taking a look at, today I gave an Honors Algebra 2 exam, all different types of questioning techniques. If it's something where I know that they could easily just Google or find an app to tell them the answer, I need to see all the work. They take a picture, they upload it within the exam, things like that. Other parts of it we've done for Algebra 1, they take a Canvas portion, but then they also need to be able to articulate what they're doing. So they'll do a flip grid of their open, instead of a free response written down on paper. They can do it on paper, but then they have to articulate it through a flip grid. And so then I grade them through a video. So I think asking and how you're asking certain types of questions is pretty important if you want to stay, pretty high on integrity.
I want to promise our listeners that Ms. Kitchen was not in the studio during the last segment. We had another teacher say the same exact thing in regards to making sure you're collaborating with your coworkers and your team before giving an exam. That's amazing. That's great.
I would say one thing that I've tried to do with the assessments on the online in either the PE or the health environment is on the I have tried to develop questions of application or reflection of trying to bring the information that we are talking about or discussing and applying it to real life via short open-ended questions that I've had to change over the past, since the fall or the spring due to our pivot or from my transition on the fast break. But as we go into it's good to read that when the students have to, and again, some of them will go really in depth, but to me, it's all about, are they understanding maybe a big concept, but then they're also using reflection on their personal experience, or they've got to identify something in the real world that answers, for application purposes. And so I think it's been real, I've relied more on those types of open-ended questions due to the lack of person-to-person contact compared to prior teaching experiences.
Well, my experience is a little bit different than the rest of you folks, because I'm not necessarily creating the assessments, I'm supporting those assessments. And so I think one concern that teachers sometimes have is when they send the student out of the room to get some of those accommodations that are found on students' IEPs, like extended time or having tests read, how can they ensure that those kids are also testing with integrity once they leave the confines of their Zoom classroom or something? How can they trust that that's happening? And so as a department, we kind of set up some standards or suggestions to teachers that could be helpful. For example, if a student needs a word bank or things chunked up, and so if they could provide maybe different forms of that test that they can provide for students that have those accommodations, and if they can share that with us in advance, then we can have that ready for the student either when they come in live or in the virtual setting. You can also provide extra time just for certain students by, apparently there's a function in Canvas where you can go in and moderate the quiz to allow extended time for single test forms. One thing that I've found really helpful, and prior to March of 2020, I had never even heard of Zoom, and now I've become pretty efficient at it. And my favorite feature working with kids one-on-one is their ability to share their screen. And so if I can see them typing live, I'm reading the test with them, I can see if they leave the site. So it's as if I'm sitting right next to them really in a lot of ways. And I can still provide those accommodations. I think that, depending on the resource room teacher, I think that this is happening across our department from what it sounds like. But, I think that we are taking the teacher's lead as much as possible and going by their suggestions, but using the tools that we have at hand.
Great. Hey, we got to go. I mean, we could be here all day, and there's a lot of information that still is left out there. But we want to thank you guys for coming to the Pivot and helping us out. You got to make me a promise that if we ask you again, you'll come back.
All right.
Did you enjoy it?
Here.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you again, and we appreciate everybody listening. We'll see you the next time on The Pivot.